Barrister Rotimi Ogunyemi. Rotimi Ogunyemi is a technology attorney with experience in commercial legal practice, specializing in technology-related legal and business issues. As a partner at the Barr Ogunyemi & Co., Johnson and Wellness Alliance, he leverages his knowledge to bridge the gap between law, business, and technology, offering innovative advice and solutions to both public and private sector clients. He is a council member of the Nigerian Bar Association and a former chair of the section's technology committee. Rotimi graduated from Obafemi Awolowo University and the Nigerian Law School. He is recognized as a speaker and writer on topics such as AI for business transformation, cybersecurity, and the legal implications of emerging technologies on a society. Rotimi Ogunyemi is the lead pastor of Christ Lovers Christian Center, Lagos.
It's been a great conference so far. I have been blessed from the welcome to the prayers to the praise and worship to the initial intro by the founder of Olive Tenders. And I must say thank you so much to the founder and the entire team for putting this conference together. It has already been impactful. In fact, I dare say if we close now, I believe strongly that everyone has been thoroughly blessed and impacted. I do not take it for granted, and it's an honor. It's indeed a privilege to be here. This particular session, so this is my intro. It's a breakout session on vocational discipleship. Much has been said about discipleship, and I must salute Pastor Itwa Igodale for that fantastic sermon, message, and charge. That was a phenomenal foundation that's been laid. And my job here is very simple. Having had that foundation already laid by Pastor Itwa. I intend to unpack this concept of vocational discipleship, and I'm going to be mindful that I perhaps have multiple audiences here, maybe students, maybe ministry leaders, maybe professionals, maybe business people. So I'm going to be speaking as God would have me across these multiple audiences, and it's my prayer and my hope and desire that everyone is impacted. So this particular session is really standing at the intersection of faith and professional development, or faith and vocation. So this is really about a place where our spiritual conviction meets our daily vocation. And so I think we have a sizable number now, so I really can delve into the meat of my presentation. Now, a little bit about myself. So I'm a lawyer. That's my day job. I'm a pastor. I was going to say that's my day job as well, but it's actually both my day job and my weekend job. I tell people that I'm a full-time lawyer, I'm a full-time pastor, and I am actually lead pastor in the church where I serve. So that kind of positions me almost uniquely to attend to this topic. It gets even more complex for me because I'm a lawyer and I'm a technologist. Then I'm a pastor. But all of that is actually what I do. Who I am is really what is more important. I'm a child of God. I'm a Jesus follower. Every day I strive to want to be like Jesus. Then I am a husband. Then I'm also a father. And those three things are actually the most important part of me, a Jesus follower, a husband, and a father. I'm a son as well. I'm a brother as well. So in that order. Then I'm a pastor. Then I'm a lawyer. Then I'm a technologist. So if I were to ask you to introduce yourself, and perhaps you might want to do so in the chat box so that we make this interactive. I'll pause a while just to read from the audience here. And I must say it's a very distinguished audience. So follow my cue and please introduce yourself in the chat box. I will pause a while just to read from different ones. And I'm hoping that while you introduce yourself, you will tell me who you are before you tell me what you do. So any takers, I'm happy to read. I know it takes a while to type, but we'll make the most of this virtual environment. So yeah, please introduce yourself, and I'll be happy to pause to meet each and every one of us. Yeah? Any takers? All right, so while that is ongoing, we have thoroughly been schooled this morning as to who a disciple is. A Jesus follower, an individual who is a little Christ, who is aspiring to be like Jesus every day, who is walking to fantastic redeemed of the Lord, wife, mother, daughter, sister, pastor, teacher. Fantastic, ma'am, that is fantastic. And I would love to see more intro as we go ahead. Great. I'm a child of God, a children minister, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, absolutely. And do I see a millionaire there? Well, I believe that's your vocation. Fantastic. And great. I'm happy to have more people respond. Just tell me who you are, and then you tell me what you do. Now, so a disciple is a Jesus follower, is a lover of God, is someone who every day is growing to become more like Jesus. And in my own words, when I break down who are those people what exactly is this? What does it mean to become more like Jesus? We could give a lot of definitions here, but the way I always say it is this: the best indicator of someone who is growing to be like Jesus is someone who has the Holy Spirit on the inside, and the Holy Spirit is helping this person to bear fruit. And we know what those fruits are from Galatians 5. So that person who is becoming like Jesus is that person whose life is exhibiting love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, long-suffering, and self-control. And so for me, that's the Jesus follower. That's the disciple. All right. So, and we can go on and on about who the disciple is in that wise, but I'm giving you my picture of a disciple. Now, but we are here to speak about vocational discipleship. So that is that intersection between that person who is striving to become more like Jesus every day, who now blends that aspiration with a vocation. So maybe I then need to break down what a vocation is. To be honest, a vocation in its truest sense, from the Latin word vocare, actually means to call, right? Fantastic. Oluwa, Tola, I see your intro. God bless you. A God's daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, a pastor, and a children and teens teacher, educationist and passionate lover of God. Also, now, I was breaking down what a vocation is. In its rawest definition, a vocation actually means, from its Latin meaning, it means to call. So, a vocation is actually a calling. However, in today's world, a vocation has taken on the parlance of what we do, right? So it actually refers to a person's occupation or a person's profession or a person's work or career. So that's a vocation. It's something we pursue, right? And typically, it aligns with our skill, our interest, and ideally, our values. Now, so that's in its rawest form what a vocation is. So if we put those two concepts together, vocational discipling or discipleship, it then means a combination of a spiritual pursuit, a spiritual aspiration with vocational aspiration, drive, or calling. Now, because this particular session, the objective is to see vocational discipleship within the context of raising up the next generation of Christ lovers, of Jesus followers. So I'm going to limit this conversation on vocational discipleship on how to raise the next generation. And so that's why if you look at the intro of this session, it's vocational discipleship, preparing the next generation for the marketplace. All right. Now, so the objective of this session is to then equip each and every one of us, right, with the tools, with the knowledge, with the know-how on how exactly do we raise the next generation for the marketplace. So putting it in another way, the aim is how do we transform both the marketplace, that's the business environment, the professional space, and the community or society that we live. How do we transform it? By integrating these two worlds, faith, that's spiritual discipline, and professional pursuits or vocational excellence. Now, to do that, I'm going to spend some time breaking the concept of work and vocation according to the Bible. All right. And I now this is a breakout session. This is not me preaching. And so that's why I'm taking my time to break all of these concepts down, probably as we would do in a school setting. All right. Now, before I go into what the biblical concept of work and vocation is, permit me to give a broader context to this session. All right. We live in a world today, whether we call it society, whether we call it the marketplace, but we live in a world that is rapidly changing. It's rapidly transforming. It's not the world that our parents or grandparents lived in the 70s or 60s or 50s. And various things are causing a major transformation in the world we live today. One of it is technology. Technology, like we know, is changing the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we live, and it is presenting a whole lot of challenges and indeed opportunities for the society, particularly the generation that is coming behind us, or that we are currently training or discipling. Now, it is in the midst of this world that we live in that we are talking about vocational discipleship. So we are saying, how do we train an emerging generation for a world that is changing? When we say technology has changed the world, technology moved from the first, the second, the third industrial revolution to what is today known as the fourth industrial revolution. I won't spend time on that, but let me quickly say that the first industrial revolution was a transformation of the world from an agrarian society into an industrialized society. The second industrial revolution was a further migration into industrialization, and it was powered by electricity and steel. And that was what built the United States over and above the UK and Europe, where the first industrial revolution started from. Then came in the 80s and 90s, the third industrial revolution, which was powered by computers. That's the digital revolution. Now, someone is wondering, so what is the fourth industrial revolution? That is digital revolution on steroids. This is a world that is being shaped by exponential technologies like artificial intelligence, like blockchain, right? Like cloud computing, big data. Now, for the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas on this call, everything I just said made a lot of sense. But for the Gen Xers, the boomers, what I just said now is probably news to you. But in the course of this session, I'm going to break it down. Now, I said all of that to give context into where I am going with this session, the world we live in. Now, back to the biblical concept of work. Genesis 1:28 in particular, when God unraveled creation, it says that, and I'm paraphrasing now, God gave man dominion. And in my own words, gave man, and of course, male, female, stewardship over the earth. So that means that from when God made Adam and Eve, he actually gave man work. However, when sin came, Genesis 3, when man fell, man succumbed to the deception of the serpent and fell. Work now became onerous, became frustrating, became what you would call a grind. So work in itself before the fall was not a curse. Work was wholesome, was fulfilling, was meaningful before the fall. All right. So I thought to make that very clear that work is not a curse, but frustrating work, meaningless work, unwholesome work is the curse. That was what happened after the fall in Genesis 3. Genesis 1, work is a blessing. All right. So, and it's good that we know this because its application to our vocation is now this. Work, we can now use the word service and substitute the word for those of us who are used to the church language, ministry. All right. So for every minister, we understand, and Pastor Itwa broke it down for us in the course of his keynote. To minister is to serve. Now, if work is actually service, it then means that whatever it is that we are doing, and I'm going into Colossians 3 now, we are not doing it for our earthly masters. We are doing it because it's a calling. There's a purpose to which God has equipped us, called us, shaped us to be a blessing to humanity. So let me say it better. Work is actually one of God's purpose for our lives. And as educators, as ministers, as pastors, as players in the marketplace, this is the concept we must pass on to the next generation. That work is not slavery. Work is not drudgery. Work actually is what gives purpose to life. Of course, our number one purpose is to worship God, to love people. Then we have to serve God. How? With the gifts, with the talents, including spiritual gifts and natural abilities that God has given to us. We should then use all of this as a pedestal to be of service to humanity. And that is regardless of whether it's within the four walls of the church or in the marketplace. So this is the way I like to say it. Regardless, and it's my belief that this is what we will pass on to the upcoming generation. Regardless of what you do, whether you are a professional, and that when we use the word professional in this climb, we are talking about folks who are qualified in the professional endeavors, like lawyers, like doctors, like engineers, like nurses, like bankers, like technologists, developers. Or you could be a business person that's an entrepreneur. You are solving problems with the skill and the knowledge that you have. Or maybe you are even a stay-at-home mother, or in this day and age now, father, all right? And your job is to invest in your children at home to build them to become perhaps what you did not have the opportunity to be. Or you are a minister in the church, particularly in the kids' church or teens' church, and you are pouring into the upcoming generation. All of this, or maybe you are even an artisan, right? You have a skill, a handcraft in the Greek sector, in the mining sector, a mechanic, a fashion designer, whatever it is. What I came here to say to us this morning is to remind us that all of this is a calling and a ministry that enhances God's purpose for humanity. Now, let me go further while we now talk about integrating our faith with our work. The principle that I want to entrench on this session is that having understood the foundation, there's actually no divide between secular job or ministry job or sacred job, so-called. Let me speak to us pastors. Ephesians makes us understand that we all have different spiritual callings as pastors, as apostles, as prophets. And the question is, for what? For building up the saints, for edification, right? So even those of us who are within the church walls, in terms of the ministry we do, our job is actually to equip the saints for what? For life and for ministry. Equip them to be Jesus's followers, to become more like Jesus every day. However, equip them also to go out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right, to be able to. So there is no divide between the faith, between the secular and the sacred. So I would use myself as a real life exhibit. So Monday to Saturday, I do my day job as an attorney, a lawyer, and do everything that lawyers do as a transactional lawyer. All right. However, I understand that my pulpit on Sunday would be to a few people. Comparatively, my pulpit on Monday all the way to Saturday actually speaks to exponentially more people than have access to on a Sunday. And I would go further now to speak what to expand this entire concept of faith and work using our jobs as ministers, either within the walls of the church or outside the church, as a pedestal. Right. So let me I'm going to share the slide, but I now want to go deeper. The things I'm going to talk about now are things that would help us as educators, would help us as ministers, and in whatever field that we play. So, but a quick recap in case you are just joining. Vocational discipleship involves developing the whole person. Okay, I see the question. Are we getting the slide? Absolutely, you get the slides. And for those who wait till the very end, you actually get more than the slide. And I'll speak more about that. All right. Okay, so vocational discipleship involves developing the whole person, the mind, the spirit, and the body. It's about stewardship. It's about service. It's about understanding that all of society looks to a crop of people for transformation and impact. Pastor Itwa has done a great job in that regard. The church had always been at the forefront of societal transformation, whether it's government, whether it's family, whether it's technology, whether it's education, whether it's the arts. The church has always been at the forefront. And if there's anything I would want us to remember at the end of this session, is that we must equip the coming generation and remind them that our fathers have set a standard. And perhaps, including my generation, maybe we have not done a great job in understanding what that standard is. But by God, this coming generation, this emerging generation, will take their place and will transform society. So Nigeria is a case study. Everything that you and I complain about, the answer lies in this whole concept of vocational discipleship. Now, let's understand that. And I'm not a psychologist or anything, but in my research, I found out that the children and the teenagers that we will be ministering to or that we will be teaching, they go through different developmental stages. All right. And actually, it's from age 12 and above that they actually then have the capacity to reason more holistically and to become problem solvers. However, from age 0 to 2, they are basically interacting and exploring their environment through their senses and through movement. Age 2 to 7, they are beginning to, do a little bit of symbolic thinking, stretching their imagination, but they still have limited logical reasoning. Now, from age 7 to 11, logical thinking now begins to form. But like I said, it's from age 12 plus that they then have the faculties to reason more broadly and to problem solve. Now, we need to know that so that when we teach, when we train with understanding that our children up to their teenage years, they learn better through multiple intelligences, whether it's through visual learning, whether it's through auditory learning, or it's kinetic learning hands-on. All right. So it's all of these approaches that I will be speaking about in terms of this entire concept of vocational discipleship. Now, in the course of this, I may not have the time to touch on how we can leverage technology, but when I share the resource I plan to share, you will see all of that detailed. Now, but as trainers, as educators, as ministers, now that we know the theoretical foundation of vocational discipleship, we know what it means, we know its objective, we know what it intends to achieve, all right, and we know its purpose, then I want to really spend, some time on what are the, in education, it's called pedagogy, right? So what are the pedagogical strategies for vocational discipleship? I mean, how do we pass the message across in a way that is meaningful? And I would say the first thing is this. Now that we understand one, and I'm recapping, every child, everything was naturally and is naturally gifted by God with some skill set. If that child has accepted Christ in his or her life, that child also has an added advantage of spiritual gifts in addition to the natural talent that God gave to that child at birth. Now, every child also has an interest, or what we call a passion, all right? To make this practical, the lawyer me, I became a lawyer because my father was a lawyer. I saw him dress up with his bib and tie, and I felt, oh, I want to be this, right? Now, but the truth is, from my teenage years, this was when computers first became mainstream. Okay, I see that my name is Rotimi Ogunyemi, and that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Rotimi Ogunyemi. You can check later on the bronchial. My name is there. And by the way, I'm happy to have to hook up with different ones on LinkedIn, on Instagram. But my name is Rotimi Ogunyemi. All right. So I became a lawyer, but from my secondary school days, actually, back in those days, the way you become anything was what you scored in your GSS3 exams. That's what it was called then. And then if you scored very high, you would be allocated to the science class. And if you didn't score too high, you find yourself in the art class or in the commercial class. Now, I scored very high, and so I was put in the science class. But because I knew I wanted to become a lawyer, I was that person who went to school to say, please, I don't want to be in science class. Put me in art class, which was the opposite of what every other person was doing. There were people who, because of their scores, were put in art class, but they came to school to say, please, can you put us in science class? Now, I was put in the arts eventually. However, even from then, and I'm talking about interest and passion now, and I'm using myself as an example so you can watch the children that you mentor or that you teach. I knew that my best subjects were the sciences, biology, mathematics, which is odd for art students or when I became a lawyer, all right? So what that meant was when technology now became mainstream through the computers, I had a thing for technology. I was obsessed with computers. So even when I was in law school, I had a small computer then. I will at the back of the class. Now I'm listening to the lecturer, but I'm also writing HTML then. That's the program you use for web design. So I already knew I had a thing for technology. Now, this is not about me. I'm saying this for your children and the children you mentor. God has put certain interest in them, has put certain gifts in them, has put certain talents in them. And for those who are Christians, they then have spiritual gifts. That shapes them. All right. So when you plan out and I'm saying that vocational discipleship, like Pastor Itwa said, he was talking about discipleship, but I'm now saying vocational discipleship has to be intentional. That means we have to be deliberate about the programs and the strategies that we use to cultivate this mindset in the upcoming generation. Intentional, whether it's within the church environment, whether it's any other environment, whether you have an informal mentoring relationship with children, whatever it is, or whether you are deeply into a profession and you are looking at building the next generation of Jesus followers who will go impact the marketplace, you have to be intentional. And intentional means you have to structure a program. Now, I don't mean structure it necessarily like the university or like the big churches, but you have to be intentional. And that's what I want to teach here. So intentional means, first of all, have a vision, like Pastor Itwa said, for vocational discipleship. So now permit me, because I'm a pastor and I'm now going to use a church environment, but this cannot be applicable to whatever environment you are working in. Look at your teenage ministry. Look at your kids ministry. Look at the youth. I mean, whatever you call them in your environment. Now, for some of us, for the first time, look at every child and look at them deeply to say, I know that there's something unique about you. There's something God has put inside of you. All right. Now, I mean, we are teaching you to become more like Jesus every day. But at the same time, we are looking at blending that with training you to go and become the best that you can be in the marketplace. Why? Because the marketplace needs help. All right. So let me now use the other side of me as the next example. And this can be any. All right. Now, because I'm a technologist, I specifically look out for those children within the church environment. And by the way, what I want to say next applies to probably 50% of children. But amongst these children, which of them are interested in technology? All right. Now, like you know, Gen Zs and Gen Alpha are digital natives. They grew up with technology. They were born into technology. And for the parents on this call, you can testify. Your children can manipulate your phones and your devices, your smart TVs better than you do. It's innate. It's in them, all right? So, and I digress now, but many of us are worried. What does this mean for the world? I mean, social media, and all of this technology, particularly now that we have artificial intelligence, right? Intelligent systems that are looking to simulate human reasoning and human cognition, systems that can learn, that can reason, right? That can write, that can read, that can create, all right? What does this mean for the children we are raising and their faith? All right. So, and I'm going somewhere. I'm not going to cover all my material, but I think what I'm saying now is extremely important. So I look at those children who are always on their devices, are always doing stuff, and I'm talking real life now. Most of these children are the children, I would say, are now from the technology department, the media department of the church. All right. And I'm speaking specifically of the church where I pastor. And I'm talking about preteens, teenagers, who are manning the cameras, who are on the console, who are working on all of the tech tools we use on the back end. And we have those who are more proficient in these skills, who are like the adults, who are training them, who are teaching them. And amongst these kids, we are having, a couple of them are going to tech boot camp starting tomorrow and at other clients to do what? To hone these skills. Now, I already see that many of them will become software developers, will become technologists, all right? And so what we then do is to position and recalibrate our entire media infrastructure in church to accommodate these children, train them, and while we train them, while we are having all of these meetings, we also then have our discipling Be Like Jesus classes. So rather than have these children being bored stiff by, another Sunday school and all, we have found ways to integrate the passion that they have into the typical Sunday school. And not only that, because we are training them to go and impact society. And I'm talking real life now. This is June. We know that the long holidays is coming after the school midterm break. All of our outreach events in church, we are actually looking at outreach events that will invite these children to utilize their skills. An example is, so the church is going to have a technology camp for the indigent students around our neighborhood who have no access to computers, who have no access to education, who have little opportunities. And many of the facilitators in this camp will be the same children in our church whom we have been training. So what are we saying? We are saying you are not just becoming more like Jesus. We are building the skills that we see that you have passion for, and we are saying, come use this skill to serve, to be like Jesus, to transform the community, to bring hope to folks who otherwise do not have hope. Now, our typical outreach in church, and these are great, is to meet the core needs of people. Clothes, food, and so we'll typically have the come and take food, come and take clothes. But now we are saying, can we go a step further? Can we begin to train these children to become the next Bill Gates, to become the next Mark Zuckerberg, to become the next Elon Musk, to become the next Jeff Bezos, right? Now, you will notice that all these names I mentioned, they are the most impactful business people on earth today. But you struggle to find if any of the people I mentioned are actually Christians, or they point people to Jesus. We want to change that. And the way we will change that is by project-based learning. That is where students, teenagers, children, you invite them, knowing their skill sets, to projects, community intervention projects, right? And you train them in-house with volunteer staff, all right? And then they go out and impact their world. This is one thing I learned very quickly, that the best way to disciple anybody, especially children, is through service, is through involvement, is making them a part of the change agents of our community. That's the best way to disciple. All right. Now, notice I've only used our experience and my own area, technology, as the example. What I said can be applicable to every and any endeavor, whether it's business plans, whether it's project management, whether it's medicine, whether it's engineers, whether it's lawyers, whether it's entrepreneurs, whatever it is, what I spelled out is just a template. And I'm saying, when we leave here, let's not just use this as sounds great, but let's go back and see within your context, whether it's church, whether it's a business environment, whether it's even a home setting, within your context, how can I, with the Holy Spirit on my inside, identify, help these children nurture the things that God has put into them, and use those giftings to impact society. Now, back to me. I said that a half of me is a lawyer and a half of me is a technologist. And what I do every day is, how do we solve problems? So when people ask me, what do you do? I say I work at the intersection of law, of technology, and society. So what that means is, what I do every day I wake up, what I do is, how do we ensure that technology is a blessing and not a cost? So I use my knowledge as a lawyer to say, all right, we have all of these tools coming up today, right? How do we ensure that these tools do not destroy us as humanity? So I bring my faith, which is ethics, into technology and governance. What do I mean? How do we use technology for good? What did Jesus come to do? He came to heal. He came to teach. He came to pour his life into people. So what do you do with your job is exactly what Jesus came to do, right? To heal people, to teach people, right? To save those that have been oppressed. What are the ills in our society today? Poverty, hopelessness, a sense of no direction. All right. So how do my job as a lawyer solve that problem? Well, part of what I do is, I'm part of those people who say to government, how do we put thoughtful rules in place to ensure that our children are not damaged by technology? All right. How do we ensure that technology is a tool that advances our job and is not a disaster to humanity? That's one. Two, how do I then take Jesus' values into the work environment? You already know, without me saying it to you, everything Pastor Itwa mentioned, these are idols that we need to deal with, all right? Bribery, corruption, greed, adultery, and all of those vices. Those are the things we find in the marketplace. And all of these things are triggered by the values of this world. What are the values of this world? Materialism. Take. All right? Power. How do I have status? Right? Enjoy and pleasure, sex. And, all of these things in themselves are not bad. But what the world system has done is to pervert all of this, and then we chase after these things, and people keep those things. But Jesus' values is the opposite. Right? Give. Your life does not consist in the things that you have, but actually in what you do, how you serve God, how you serve people, right? Jesus says, rather than have this obsession for power, I have called you to serve, all right? Jesus said, he that will be first among you, will be the servant of all. That is Christian value. integrity, humility, right? So what we are saying to the next generation is whatever it is you do, let your life exhibit the values that Jesus exhibited, and go out there and be light. Go out there and be salt. Now, I will pause a while so that this can continue to be interactive. And if there's anything I have said that you have thought about and you think, and you have a question, I will pause and I'll ask that you put your question or your comments in the chat box. I would actually pause and wait a while you do that. Okay. I imagine that perhaps you are still being thoughtful about the questions that you want to give. So let me pivot a bit from everything I've been saying to now talk about technology's role. Prior to now, I have been more specific about the heart of technology. So whatever setting you operate in, whether it's a school setting, whether it's a church setting, technology can help you be intentional. Technology can help you to be intentional about digital or vocational, discipleship. Thanks for the teaching. As an engineer and a minister in children's church, how do we use the tech side to impact the kids when in church? We don't have any equipment at the moment. Fantastic question, and I would address that while I'm speaking on this particular point. Now, I totally get it that resource would be a challenge. Resource means the technology, tools, and the infrastructure to make some of these things happen. I will use myself as an example. Practically all the tools that we use today are free tools, and free to the extent that we need only to do the research. I mean, so as an example, I know that this particular coloration of Zoom we are using on this session may not be free, but Zoom in itself is free, all right? So how about you leveraging, and I'm just going to throw ideas out there. I'm going to share a resource after this session, okay, where all the details, including the things I've not said here, you'll find it in the resource, which I put together anyway. First of all, look at the free tools you can use. Do you have small groups in your church or in whatever setting you work with? Small groups mean the group of teenagers, children, where you probably pray together and you use and you share together, you take them through the scriptures and all. How about you say 15 minutes of that WhatsApp call to say, all right, all of you, can you go research how can we be a blessing to our community, and come back to me next Sunday, all right? And let them go and think about it. And when they come back, you already know that they are free tools. Google Workspace is a free tool. Google Workspace is like having an entire technology stack only because you have a Gmail account. For those who know, Google Workspace has the duplicate of, let me use that word, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Google Classroom, and that's actually where I'm going to. Google Classroom is where you can actually have you can have children in a classroom setting without having them in a physical space. And when the next time you go into your Gmail account, there's this set of 9 dots on the extreme top right. Click on that dot and you will see all the tools. One of the tools is Google Classroom, where you can bring in these children. Now, but before you do all of that, you need to train yourself. All right. So, and I'm speaking specifically to those who are looking at technology. YouTube, and for the question as to how do we find the balance where children are not obsessed? All right. I'm going to answer that question with this tip I want to give. YouTube, now, with all humility, all right, I am perhaps today one of Nigeria's foremost technology lawyers. And I'm going somewhere. So this is not about me. I'm going somewhere. So that means when it comes to law and technology in Nigeria today, I'm perhaps in the top 3. How did that happen? It didn't happen because I went to Harvard or Yale or Oxford. It happened because 7-8 years ago, I started to take self-learning courses on YouTube, but serious courses. Courses like Understanding Computers, which is a course by Harvard. Courses like CS50, which is a course by Harvard University. Courses like Understanding Financial Technology. Now, when I started to take those courses, let me tell us about AI, and I want to talk to you about your children. Those courses, the minute you take those courses, the artificial intelligence system that powers the recommendation engine of YouTube will begin to suggest similar courses and lectures to you. Now, that may sound like a small thing, but it's a big thing. If your children spend time on YouTube and all they do is movies, the algorithms would only suggest movies to them. But if your children go on YouTube and you guide them to courses that would empower them for the marketplace, the algorithms will begin to suggest more of the same. That is called pattern recognition. That's artificial intelligence. So I am not afraid that my children will get sucked into the craziness of the internet if I guide them by the hand to the wholesome path of the internet. Then, it is the same for Instagram, it's the same for Facebook, it's the same for any of these platforms. The recommendation engines work by looking at your pattern of engagement. So if you are exposed to wholesome content, you will get more wholesome content. The opposite is also the case. If you pursue meaningless content, you get more meaningless content. So I was going somewhere and I'm saying, I became who I am today in technology law because of YouTube, social media. Simple, right? And that can be the story of any young person today. Now, I want to end this, all right? And I'm going to end this. Okay, did I get a feedback? Okay. This is my penultimate slide. And again, for those who are asking, I will share the slides, all right? I'm going to end this by saying, we must be intentional. We must be deliberate. We must look at our children. And when I say our children, I mean the children that we mentor. We look at what God has put into them. Then we look at the challenges in society and we say, how do we draw a through line from the giftings that God has put in these children to becoming a solution to the problems that you and I complain about in society? Then, without waiting for them to become adults, How do we harness the skills, the interest, the passion that they have today? And how do we then, by our own life, model everything that I have said in the last couple of minutes to them? How do our own life now mirror, first of all, the person of Jesus? Remember, I said to me, discipleship is being like Jesus. And being like Jesus is a life that exhibits the fruit of the Spirit. All right. So how does your life mirror love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control? See, we live in a world where there's so much pressure. And when the world's pressure is pressed on us, it is whatever is inside us that will come out. When you apply pressure to a toothpaste tube, it is toothpaste that is inside that will come out. All right. So when the world and when the economy and when all those things we complain about put pressure on us, the thing that must come out is what Jesus said is the most important thing: love, joy, kindness, peace. Our children are watching. So I can say all the things I said today and be blue in the face to them. They are watching. Is my life reflecting the Jesus that I'm preaching? So that's one. Jesus said, I came to serve. All right. So all the platforms that I have, how do I use it to serve? And how do I involve the children in this service? To the community, to the local businesses, and to all the people that I engage with. They are watching. 3, how then do I leverage technology to make this learning more accessible and to remove the barriers that ordinarily are in our way in terms of this intentional kind of vocational discipleship? Now, for those of us who are already professionals or entrepreneurs and all, how do we constructively use mentorship as another way to train? That means, do we intentionally bring these children into our work environment on internships, on externships, and let them see how we respond to real life challenges and situations? I mean, there are times when I'm in an international call and I actually bring in my daughter, who, by the way, is in the university, on the call to say, come and observe how we deal with real life business issues, how we solve tension, how we mitigate issues. Because I can go on and on and on and say it, but they need to see it happen in real time. Notice what I said there. I leverage technology. Most of these calls, international transactions we do it over Zoom. Now I can bring in my kids, not just my biological children, but even the children that I mentor, to be a part of this conversation, business conversation, and they see how my faith, the ethics that I live, I represent it in my day to day. I can go on and on and on. This is my my penultimate slide. And it's actually a call to the educators and the ministers amongst us to encourage and adapt vocational discipleship frameworks within their churches and institutions. Right after now, I'm going to share my exact notes, not the slides, the notes that I used to prepare for this training, because I know I couldn't say 1/10 of the things I put together. In that note, I actually put in frameworks that you can use to build a vocational discipleship program in your church, in your business place, all right? And even to train yourself, all right? For business leaders, there's the need to also be intentional about vocational training programs, all right? And that means open your businesses, can the Sunday school department in the church next door actually bring their children in to come observe business? And hopefully it's an ethical business. And for church leaders, I've actually been speaking to church leaders all along. This is my last slide, and I deliberately put Timothy Keller's book on this slide. Timothy Keller's book says every good endeavor. I mean, it gives me every theological thing I spoke about. I learned it from Pastor Tim Keller, who sadly passed away last year, right? And I recommend this book to everyone. You know, this is one book that will unpack a lot of the things that I've said in a much clearer and better way. And in the resource that I would share after now, I listed several other books, you know, in there that you can also engage with. Now, so what have I said in a nutshell? Our society is changing, our world is changing, our children, many of them are becoming disillusioned. Sadly, some of them, and this is happening more in the US than in Nigeria, but it's getting close to home. They are leaving the church because number one reason is what they see is hypocrisy. People who are the opposite of who they say they are on Sunday from Monday to Saturday. They are leaving the church, and then we want to stem that tide. And the answer is in vocational discipleship. There are examples of people in Nigeria today that we can point to. The CEO of Costaris Motors, Dr. Cosmos Maduka, is one major example that I always point to as someone who his faith and his business, you cannot separate them. He brings in his pursuit of spirituality into his day-to-day work, and you can tell. Pastor Ibukwa Woshika is another great example. And I'm so glad that she spends a lot of time mentoring, particularly young women, to work in this line. I mean, chairman of First Bank is no mean feat, but at the same time, remaining an icon in Christendom. Even Reverend Dr. Sam Adeyemi is a great example. He started the church, by God built a great church, but you all know that today he has taken a step back from the pulpit and is impacting the globe across the world on such things as leadership, right? So in the resource I will share, you would actually see some of those things that I call the content that we must teach. We must teach leadership, all right? We must teach what we call soft skills. But these are not really soft skills. These are the real things: critical thinking, creativity, right? I jokingly say to my people in church that the only reason why I remain a pastor on the pulpit is because we are great as Christians. I have one who are so big on the spirituality, and it's true. The spiritual informs everything else. But God also gave us a brain, and he gave us a brain to use it, all right? And so we develop that spiritual part of us, which is critical because everything flows from the depth of our spirituality. But how is it's so painful when you hear in your spirit the sound of abundance of rain, but the mind does not have the capacity to take what the spirit has caught. And that's where we must also pay attention as the church, right? We expand their spirit, we also expand their mind. Their mind is the intellect. The intellect is not in contention with the spirit. Those two are working together. And we limit God many times, right? When we do not leverage the mind as much as we do the spirit. And the answer lies in vocational discipleship. I also in that resource gave examples of people outside of Nigeria who you can look at. And also, I then spent time in the resource to then talk about educational institutions. And I deliberately used institutions outside Nigeria, like Oral Roberts University. These folks deliberately do not only train their students, to be professionals. They actually train for missions, right? And they give dual degrees. And so there's a reason why you wonder why folks who have the means send their kids to Oral Roberts University in the USA. Now, of course, there are Christian universities in Nigeria, but I think there's a lot more that needs to be done, and maybe the NUC doesn't make it possible, to specifically integrate the professional training and missional work. So really and truly, I'm done, and it's really a delight facilitating this session. I'm going to spend the next few minutes reading the comments. Thank you very much. I'm seeing some of the comments here. These are great feedback. And at the same time, look out for questions while if I have the privilege to do so, share the resource that I have been talking about all the while. Like I said, this resource are my notes, but you could call it a book if you want. So that's in addition to my slides. I'm actually sharing my notes. And you will see there, I highlighted some things in color. And so you know that this is not just a book. This is notes. And I really, really would urge you to do well to engage with them. All right. So thank you very much. It's been a blessing. It's been a blessing. So I understand that the breakout room needs to close now. So what I would do is I will give the facilitator and the organizers both the slides and my notes. And I believe that they would have their way of getting it across to you. Okay. I have a question under my comment. Right. What do I, as an educational planner who is offered? Can you share your contact with me as I need to contact you based on? Okay, I will share my contact based on what I do as an educational planner who is also interested. Okay, I will share my contact. So just for everyone, you can email me at pastorro@gmail.com. So yeah, just send me an email to say, oh, I was in your session. So in case you don't get my material from the organizers, you will get it directly from me. So whatever you do before you leave the session, copy my email and send me an email. I will respond with the slides and my notes. I would respond with the slides and my notes. I would. But for those who perhaps have a second, I am going to attach the notes right now.